and these other people, and as it comes out, people are now beginning to realize just how far down the path to a totalitarian state we've got. Oh,
incredible. Yeah, there's the article. Child abuse witness held in Peterborough prison, drugged, key whistleblower. Unbelievable.
9 months after the United People looting the English Defence League, many of you may know, it sprung up, it spread like a wildfire across the country. 9 months into the EDL, we had the first demonstration for the Scottish Defence League planned. I've gone to Luton Airport. I'm flying out to Edinburgh. I'm arrested by Special Branch. I'm held by Special Branch on a charge of criminal damage. I'm then taken to a police station. 30 police officers have come from Yorkshire. The crime is criminal damage. You know, on the top of these hotel room doors, the little metal connector. At a hotel that I've stayed in Leeds, £30 criminal damage was done in the hallway to a door. I apparently fitted the description of the man that had done it. So 15 police officers at my wife and kids' house with machine guns. 15 police officers at my mum and dad's house. Seized all electrical goods. Their warrant said they could take electrical goods to see if I'd booked the hotel. Yeah, this is what it was all about. They took my dad, 65 years old. This is the third time they're in my parents' house, my family's house, and this is all pressure. It's all intended to get your family distraught, upset, and it works because, as any of you could imagine you started expressing your political belief against something, and then 3 times your mum's door's been kicked off. Your wife, when I lived in that house when they come with machine guns, my daughter was at the nursery. The lady who ran the nursery was 3 doors up. My wife wouldn't take the kids to nursery again after that. It works. My wife was crying, coming home, crying her eyes out. It works, and it is political. And so this charge of criminal damage, Yorkshire police have come down. I was due to speak at a demonstration in Bradford about grooming. Grooming at this point was still hidden. The police's tactic was still to hide it. No one knew about it. Yeah? We were talking about it. The police officers that come down from Yorkshire, when they bailed me on the criminal damage charge, they bailed me. My bail conditions were not to contact the EDL, yeah, not to send an email. These were all bail conditions put in. The bail date was the exact time I had to go to a police station. The exact time we were due to protest in Bradford. Yeah? This had nothing to do with a criminal damage at all. Yeah? This was used as an excuse to get in my house, seize my computers, get intelligence. At the same time, when I come home, my wife said, one police officer spent 6 hours at that file. Yeah? Because their warrant didn't allow them to take paperwork. So instead, what they did is I had the files, which were all to do with my properties and businesses, where one officer wrote everything down. So I thought, what are they doing then? I was confused with what they're doing now. 3 weeks later, once the demonstration had passed, charges dropped. 3 months later, boom, my door goes in, 6 o'clock in the morning. By this time, I've become publicly known and a target. People want to kill me for what I'm saying, for speaking the truth about Islam. 3 months later, doors go in. I run down. I was quite relieved to see the police, because I wasn't sure who it could be. When I saw the police, it was a Luton police officer, and the first thing he said is, "I'm sorry, Steve." I said, "Don't be sorry, you've got your orders." He said, "We're taking your wife." And I'm getting emotional if you think about it. So they arrested my wife, who was 6 months pregnant at the time. Now, sorry, I'm embarrassing. Yeah. She was 6 months pregnant. She went for an 8-hour interview. They arrested me as well. They were arrested on tax evasion and money laundering. My wife sat a 6-hour interview where she was told she was looking at 7 to 8 years in prison. When I come out, she was broken and begging. The cases were mortgage. From this, they froze my assets. At the time, I had 2 businesses. I had 7 properties. For a young man, I was successful and doing well. My passion was making money. But then the reality for me was it didn't matter how much money we make or how much we want to move into nice areas. The problem will be left to our children for the next generation if we ignore it. What have I done? This is the 4th time of arrests. What have I done? I've started speaking about Islam. That's it. What have we done? What has my wife done? She's done nothing. Now, we were re-bailed. My wife answered bail and so did I every 6 weeks for 3 years. And every time, so waiting all the time for the case, waiting all the time for the charge. They closed our businesses. They put us on a restraining order that meant you're allowed £250 a week to live on. Now, if you spend over that £250 a week, you get 18 months in prison. These orders were brought in to deal with terrorists. They were being put on us for speaking about terrorists. So it's innocent until proven guilty. The Labour government passed these new laws where they didn't need a crime. When they come in to arrest us, they didn't have a crime. They're looking for one. They didn't have a crime. And when I say they went back through, they forensically investigated everything I'd done in my life, going back 10 years. And when that didn't work, they forensically investigated everything my mum and dad had done, everything my wife had done, everything her brother-in-law had done, everything my cousins had done. They said that I swore outside the football stadium. 2 police officers said I swore. Yeah? I thought, well, that's nothing. Yeah? I was taken to court. I was convicted for swearing outside a football stadium. The headlines in the newspapers were, I was convicted of a football hooligan riot. I was convicted apparently for calling them sheep shaggers. Yeah? Luton were playing Newport, England versus Wales. Yeah? It was a football match. Now, what became apparent when I was prosecuted and convicted, they produced a map. This map showed, which when this goes online you'll see the map, this map showed where I was and wasn't allowed to enter for the next 3 years. I was not allowed to step in the Muslim community. I'm with my family.
You're going to get arrested.
Why am I going to get arrested? In front of my kids. So you want to arrest me in front of my kids because what?
Listen, you're going to talk yourself into this.
I'm not talking myself into it.
I'm trying to be reasonable.
You're not being reasonable. You're telling me I have to leave the city. Yes. I'm with my family.
Yeah.
Why? Tell me why.
It's already been explained.
No, go on, why?
I'll explain
You think me and my children are commit violence?
I think there's likely to be. Look at the way you're behaving.
Tell me.
Look at the way you're behaving.
Do you know how many people from this country are in Luton? Why have you come up to me?
Pardon?
Why have you come up to me?
You're part of a group.
I'm not part of the group. I'm with my 3 kids. What group am I part of?
You're with a group of people who've been identified as potentially being involved in violence.
Are you for real?
Yes.
My daughter is 5, my son is 7, and my daughter is 9.
You're not setting a very good example.
I think it's a good day for freedom of speech. You've all heard, I was getting called a little fascist as I was walking in here. There's protests outside from Unite Against Fascism who, the definition of fascism is trying to stop people who have a difference in opinion of you, which is what I have. So I think they're showing themselves up as fascists. I'd like to thank, I know there's probably been a backlash against the union for inviting me here today. It's been a good day for freedom of speech, but also a bad day. I had a speech prepared that I was going to come here and talk about, everything I had prepared to say. I was visited 4 days ago by probation, and I was warned about my licence. I'm on an early release from custody, so I'm on a licence. And certain things I was going to say would result in me getting recalled back to prison. Now, even though, which I said, obviously I haven't got the same freedom of speech as what everyone else has got then. They said, no, not whilst you're on licence. I think why is a major question. Why was the English Defence League a phenomenon? Why was it born in Luton? Why was it started? What are the reasons that brought it there? I'll talk to you about Luton. I was born in 1982. When I was born in 1982, we had 1 mosque. I just want you to understand the demographic of the town. In 2014, we now have 30 mosques. The projected government growth forecast for the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community of Luton by 2030 is to increase by 70 to 77%. This would not be a problem if we didn't experience the problems we see related within the community. At the same time as I talk you through this, I don't want for 1 minute for you to think I'm tarring all Muslims as bad. I'm just giving you a projected view of my life. I want you to understand the stories that have happened. I'll start with my cousin, Jeanette, or my cousin's cousin. She was sexually abused, she was groomed. It's what we now know as grooming. She was raped. She woke up one day, she was found running semi-naked from Bury Park. Bury Park is the area where a lot of the Muslims have congregated and live. It's where these 30 mosques are. She was picked up by prostitutes in the street. Her dad collected her. If I talk about the failures from the police, when the family, I want you to understand and try and picture this as though it was your family relative. When the family were going to the police, when the girl is missing for 2 days, 3 days, yeah, and there is no response, and up until the Rotherham report, people wouldn't believe these stories, because they are unbelievable. They would say she's a drug addict, because in the end she was a drug addict, because she was hooked on heroin that they were giving to her. She would climb out of the bedroom window to get back to them for her fix. The failures everyone now knows from the police force on these issues, but I want to just talk you through. When I was at school, the high school I went to, you had the Muslim playground and you had the non-Muslim playground. That's the same in pretty much every school in Luton. It wasn't divided through racial lines, it's divided through religious lines. We didn't cause that division. My friend at school, I was seeing a girl called Charlotte, she's from a lovely Irish family, and I was 12 years old, and my friend Razwan was seeing her friend Lisa. And I can remember Lisa phoning up Charlotte hysterical, because Razwan's family had all gone up to Lisa's house to threaten the family to say that they couldn't see or speak to each other. As a 12-year-old boy, this was a light bulb moment for me to think, what is this about? There was another boy around the corner from where I lived called Jamie. He fell in love with an Asian girl at school. He got violently attacked for that. When they went to sixth form, Luton sixth form is the main sixth form in Luton town. I could have gone to sixth form. I got 11 GCSEs, I got an A in maths, 5 Bs, 5 Cs. As a young English lad in the town, to go to that sixth form, I have to be prepared to look at the ground. And I'm not prepared to look at the ground. That's because there were Pakistani Muslim gangs in that sixth form, extremists in that sixth form. Now, they went to Jamie went to sixth form. His girlfriend went to sixth form, who he's in love with. They couldn't even acknowledge that they knew each other, okay, because of the fear of what would happen. I had another friend, John English, on a night out. I'm just taking you through stories. John English, his girlfriend's name was Akvinder. She was a Sikh actually, but she was from Letchworth. But we were out on a night out in Luton Town, and these Muslim lads just come over and spat straight in her face. So these are instances. I'm not saying it's all Muslims. I'm just talking, saying there are problems. I've seen them. Anyone who's been murdered by a Muslim gang, probably don't I do. Do you know only 15-year-old girls that you know that you've grown up with that have been raped or pimped? You don't. So I don't expect you to understand the issues.
These are all personal issues of yours.
Personal issues in towns and cities like mine that are happening, and they're not happening with the Sikh community, they're not happening with the Jewish community.
And indeed, they're not happening with most Muslims.
No, they're happening within the Islamic community. This is what I'm saying, that it's an Islamic problem. And when I'm just a simple person, so I'm just a normal person, but when I'm looking at, I have to look for where this hatred is coming from.
So are you seriously suggesting there aren't white drug dealers and there aren't white gangs?
Of course I'm not, no.
Or Sikh gangs or any other kind of...
No, I'm not, but I'm saying some of these specific issues are coming from the Islamic community, solely the Islamic community. Terrorists wanting to blow us up, constant hostile activity towards our youth, all these problems, and from sitting back, there's got to be something it's coming from. None of the other communities are spreading it, so we're a symptom of the problem. The English Defence League are a symptom.
You're claiming that community is spreading it. Actually, what we're talking about
members
here...
of the community.
Yes, exactly, as you could talk about members of the white community doing all sorts of atrocious things.
Yeah, but not racial abuse. I'll talk about Mark Sharp. Mark Sharp was murdered in 1995. Any of you can Google this murder. Yeah? He was my uncle's friend and his son was my age. He was going to get takeaway. He was in his car, a van. He was going to get a takeaway when a car braked in front of him. He swerved around it and he gave a hand gesture. He was followed. He didn't know he was being followed. 4 Muslim Pakistanis were in the car. They phoned for reinforcements. More come. He was not aware of this. When he got outside the kebab shop, he come out, his son's with him. They beat him. They hit him so many times, they were hitting him with bats, with poles, with sticks. Read the murder, it will shock you. Okay? He was not going down. He would not go down. One of them jumped up in the air with a knife and snapped it off in his forehead. He survived for 3 days, and then he died. Many of his friends, and what I'm trying to envisage and ask you is that you just take yourself, think of this is someone you know in your family, this has happened to. The judge in court said, you can take, if you wish to a verdict of manslaughter, you can take into account the fact that he aggravated them enough to make a young Asian male act in this way. They got 4 years in prison for that, if you want to talk about justice. That's not justice. They were out within 2 years in the town of Luton Town. Most of the people in Newmark and his friends left Luton after that incident. I could stand here all day and talk about other incidents that have gone on. I'm going to show you a video now. I'll ask you to watch.
A series of attacks on the homes of elderly people in Luton are racially motivated. The victims fear the aim is to force them to sit up and move out.
This is the latest attack, a beer keg thrown through the window of a 74-year-old great-grandmother in the middle of the night. It's the 3rd time it's happened. The last was on Christmas Eve.
You can imagine Christmas Eve and somebody flinging a brick through your window, how it felt. When everything's supposed to be jolly and happy, you feel down, innit? And they are flinging brick through my window and round. They are cowards.
In the next street, another couple who've been targeted repeatedly.
At night time, I personally can't sleep, and you don't know what next they will do. You wonder sometimes if they're going to put petrol or bombard something through the letterbox.
And around the corner, this house. It looks unlived in. In fact, it's been home to one couple for 60 years, now so terrorised they won't take down the walls.
Because it always happened between about 1 and 4 o'clock in the morning, and you were really worried, sick, wondering what was going to happen next. Because there weren't just little bits of stones or things, these were real house bricks, lumps of concrete that they'd thrown through the window.
Meanwhile, families are doing what they can to protect themselves.
I am one of the old-time, determined black women. I am not going nowhere. If they don't like me here, they can go. I'm quite happy where I am.
Scared, but most of all angry, they're not moving.
Now, again, maybe take it to the community you live in. You know these people, because I know the Palmers and I know the Howards, yeah? You can imagine eruptions these sort of incidents cause in your community. There was actually 30 people's houses that were attacked at these times. There was 88 attacks before the police acted. The way we see, what we're seeing in the Rotherham report is it shows the police inability, conspiracy with the police and different organisations, social services, where they downplayed it and suppressed it, because they didn't want to be deemed as racist, yeah? So crimes went up. They facilitated the rape of a generation of kids for 20 years due to not wanting to be called racist. Similar things, when the police haven't acted, they haven't acted in towns and cities and communities like Luton for incidences like this. That's why, again, what you understand is, I know those families. I remember these times when these things were happening. And if you watch the actual video of the Howards, it was Muslims that offered them support. It was Muslims that offered them help. I'm not painting a picture. All Muslims want them to move out of that community. I'm just wanting you to understand there are problems in these communities. There's problems that need addressing, they need talking about, okay? So bearing in mind, when they arrested me and my wife, we've been on bail conditions for 3 years. I'm charged. They didn't charge my wife. I'm charged with tax. I'm taken to court. Their whole case of why they've done this, they say I owe them £137,000 tax. That would mean me not paying tax on about £300. I did have a business that was turning over quite a bit of money at the top for those few years. Yeah? It took 20 minutes in court for me to produce, for the evidence to be produced, I owed them not a single penny. Bearing in mind they've closed my businesses. They've destroyed my shop. They've destroyed everything we're doing. And then within 20 minutes we've got not guilty. This tactic of what they wanted to do actually backfired because it made me the most dedicated leader to the English Defence League they would ever get. Because that was what I had then, yeah? And I was angry. I said, if they didn't do this restraint, if they didn't arrest my wife, if this didn't happen, I wouldn't be standing here talking because I never would have been able to continue leading that movement and live a life. But because they took my life, I had the movement left. So it didn't really work. Even for someone that I was getting married 2011. The night before the wedding, all the men go for a meal, yeah? All the men meet up. We had a meal booked for 32 people. These are just little things. It may not seem like a lot, but it's anywhere and everywhere you move, they pressured. I booked a restaurant in a place called Billy's in Harpenden. Harpenden is a beautiful little English, wealthy area, yeah? In comparison to Luton. So people from Luton will go to Harpenden for a nice time, yeah? To get away from Luton, yeah? Now, we had a table booked. The afternoon of the thing, I get a phone call saying, sorry, we've cancelled your table, from the owner of the restaurant. So what do you mean you cancelled my table? She said, we've had the police. So I said, look, just wait there, I'm coming to see you. So I went to see her, I walked in to see her, and she said, you? I said, yeah, because I've been going to this restaurant for years. Now, the difference is, in this restaurant, this is a completely, exclusively white town. Yeah? There's no black. Most of my best friends are black. Right? So people in this town would remember, I've been going there since 17, 18, 19 with my group of friends. So the manager said, you're always in here. I've had the police in here telling me there's loads of far-right racists, troublemakers, and there'll be trouble here. So we'll have to have police on duty. I said, I'm coming for a meal. I'm just coming for a meal with all of my family. The night before our wedding. So it didn't work because once she met me and she knew me, my cousin used to work in the venue, so I spoke to her. She allowed us to have the restaurant, but every little place that they could employ a little bit of pressure. And we haven't even started yet on where it goes.
I'm sitting here in a studio in Doha. We are in Qatar. We are arguably in the heart of the Middle East. Therefore, we are in the heart of Islam. Let me just read something to you from the Holy Book, and I want you to react to that, okay? And you can't see me, but I've got a copy of the Quran in front of me. There are parts of a Holy Book that talk about people being persecuted and killed. There are parts of a Holy Book that talk about people all over the world being killed because you are my followers. Another quote from one of the Holy Books in this part of the world talks about people being stoned to death with stones until they die. Another part of a holy book that one can read in this part of the world talks about utterly destroying your enemies, spare them not, but slay both man and woman. When you hear those quotes, what do you think that speaks to?
I'd ask you why you're reading the Old Testament to me.
You've had that before, haven't you?
Simple question.
So,
no, it's a simple question. I'm not stupid. You're sitting quoting verses from the Old Testament, thinking that I'm a moron that would think that's from the Quran. I know the Old Testament and I know the Quran. Now, can I ask you a question? Have you read the Quran?
Yes.
You have?
Yes.
Yeah? So
in English, not in Arabic, but in English.
In English, are you free, sitting where you are in Doha, to criticise the Prophet Muhammad? Are you free to do that?
Yes, I am. I have had intelligent conversations with my Islamic colleagues on the very same subject.
So you know of the life of Muhammad, yes? You know that he murdered 600 people. You know that he raped. You know that he has... No. People in the Bible is very different to people in the Bible and the messenger of God, who is the most moral compass for every Muslim in the world. And when he is the moral compass for every Muslim in the world, and he married a 6-year-old child called Aisha, and he raped her when she was 9, I have a problem with that. And when people wish to live as Muhammad did in my country, well, the country you're sitting in now, people from Israel are not even allowed to enter. So if we want to talk about fascism, the country you're in now, people with Israeli passports. But, okay, is that untrue? Can someone in Qatar leave Islam?
Yes.
Is apostasy punishable?
You don't have to be Islamic to be in Qatar. You can leave the country, you can come into the country if you are Jewish.
A Muslim cannot leave Islam. Is punishable in Qatar. The country that you're talking to me from, the country whose tower I'm sitting in, the country that funds radicalisation worldwide, the country that supports Hamas, and you're sitting there trying to take some moral high ground about issues in the world that relate to Islamic extremism, when the country and the people who are paying your wage are propagating that extremism worldwide. I've come into this building and just had to go through an airport-style scanner, and when I asked why, they said because of the Paris attacks.
Tommy, I do have to move the debate on because I do have to move the debate on. Yes, of course I do. Because otherwise you and I will end up having...
what you're hearing.
No, that's not true, sir. Otherwise you and I will have to have...
tell you the truth.
You and I will have to have a conversation down the pub the next time I'm back in London. Alexander, coming back to you, the imagery...
They then turn it into, a can of Stella. They're just drunk hooligans. They're just Brits. Can't listen to them. Their new Islamic masters are here. So again...
It's worth asking a question. How come the Muslims who don't speak Arabic, other than the Imams, and how come the Muslims who don't speak Arabic completely, and how come non-Muslims, university teachers who have studied Islam and received degrees in Islam, how come they haven't come across this? Why is it that we are now learning about this Bukhari? The answer is very simple. When you go to a Muslim bookstore and you say, can you give me a copy of the Bukhari? You would expect to get this, but instead they'll give you this. They'll give you one volume that is made up of Arabic and English. They have cherry-picked and selected for you and translated for you what they want you to read from Sahih al-Bukhari. They do not want you to read everything within Sahih al-Bukhari. As you can see, they have titled it Sahih al-Bukhari, the early years of Islam. And they explain and translate. But this is not al-Bukhari. This is a small compilation from what they want you to know about Bukhari. This is the real Bukhari. Muslims go around the world rioting, killing people, because they believe that their Prophet Muhammad has been insulted. The Prophet Muhammad that I believe in, my version of the Prophet Muhammad, is someone who respects the Jews and loves the Christians and honors the atheists and allows churches and synagogues within his government. The problem with my version of Muhammad is that only a minority follow it. The majority follow a different Muhammad. And when I say majority, I do not mean 5 to 50%. I mean 95% of the Muslims believe in the Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad portrayed in the Bukhari. Nowhere else. Nowhere else. All books of history refer to the Bukhari. What really is Muhammad like? According to the Bukhari, according to the faith of the Grand Mufti, according to the faith of television celebrities that are Muslim in this country, according to the faith of activists within America, all of these Muslims who go and say that Prophet Muhammad was an environmental activist, a human rights activist, okay, I don't disagree, but is that the Muhammad you believe in? Or are you changing faiths every time you're subjected to a question that you cannot answer? So you change faith in order to answer that question. The Prophet Muhammad that the majority of the people speak about and fight for and defend is not the Muhammad they believe in as an ideology. There's a big difference between the Prophet Muhammad in the actual sacred scriptures and the Prophet Muhammad that is portrayed as a prophet to the West by 95% of the Muslims. The Muhammad that is being portrayed in the West is a Muhammad I reject. I do not believe in that prophet. But they do not want that. They want to stick to the Muhammad that they have been brought up listening to. But the sad news is, it's all a fake. The Muhammad Linda Sarsour mentions is not the Muhammad she believes in.
Now, I want you to ask yourselves as well, do you think it's got better or worse? That was years ago. Seriously, do you think it's got better or worse? It hasn't got better, okay? I'm now going to show you a video from 6 months ago. Yeah, just talk me through. Tell me the story.
Okay, well, about 5 years ago, I got rid of my car. and I became more prominent in the streets of London, and I started noticing people glaring as they would pass me, or people were spitting very close to me in the streets. And after about a few months, I realised actually they're spitting at me, and I faced quite a lot of anger. I faced quite a lot of just aggression from various younger Muslims in the community, simply because I was a Jew, or rather a conspicuous Jew in college. And one time I was cornered in the college. I was shoved into the corner, and I was made to justify the existence of Israel. Well, I got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I experienced a lot of panic attacks. Yeah. So it's, yeah.
You've been living under a barrage of abuse and threats and intimidation for years?
Yes, yeah, 5 years now. And you know, it's been coming up for 300 incidents, attacks on me on my home. And it probably wouldn't be so bad if I knew that, you know, maybe the authorities would have my back, but unfortunately they don't. I do think every morning, you know, I'm still here, and I go to bed at night. I live today, you know.
I've seen the image of your property. It's like Fort Knox.
Yeah, I mean, my friends that, I mean, I had to stop my friends coming to the house because I couldn't guarantee their safety. So I never have friends at the house. I always meet my friends outside. I can't have family to live with me because it's too dangerous. I live in...
See, this is 2014 in the Borough of London. 2014, do you know what it's like to see a grown man brought to tears? Do you know how many families I meet that are brought to tears in Luton and towns like that? The reason why I'm showing you these videos, I want you to understand this is real life. This is not made up. When we're talking about issues and the reason why we're passionate about these issues, we're not making it up. And at the same time, he's the first to say the vast majority of Muslims are not involved in this in any way. But there is a problem. The reason why I met him, I've been talking to him for 5 years. A lot of people then, with the English defence, they don't go to the police anymore in towns like Luton. They contacted us to talk about the issues, talk about what's happening with their families, how they're feeling persecuted, etc. I went to meet him because he's moving to Israel, because he feels he has to move to Israel if he wants to be safe. His only crime is that he's Jewish, and he's living within a Muslim ghetto. And now as we're talking through, we all remember September 11th. I think everyone should remember where they were on September 11th. I was at Luton Airport on my apprenticeship. I remember everything. And then I remember getting a phone call again about Luton Sixth Form from a friend who was at the Sixth Form. That's the age I was at. I was probably 18, but going back to then. Saying that Muslims were cheering and celebrating. A lot of these things may sound unbelievable. Yeah? When I then went to my local shops in my estate, I see Magnificent 19 posters across the estate, yeah? Glorifying these people. On the first anniversary we saw in my hometown of Luton. Imagine this is your town where you live. You've got posters glorifying terrorism.
This is an Islamic jihad attack. The man that done this would have either been radicalised in a prison, or he would have been radicalised on the streets of the UK with full knowledge of our government and our security services. They will know who he is. Yeah, mate, I have information that shows there was 4 terrorist attacks last week in France. 4 in France. There was 12 planned last year. Driving your car like this man has done is exactly what the Inspire magazine, which is Al-Qaeda's magazine, which was downloaded by 50,000 British Muslims last year. 50,000 British Muslims downloaded a terrorist manual in our country. 50,000. Not 10, not 20. 50,000 people who want to see exactly what you see there. That's what they want. They want war, they want death, they want destruction, and we keep on pandering like you just come up to me saying it's got nothing to do with Islam. It's got everything to do with Islam.
Everything to do with Islam.
It's got everything to do with Islam.
I'm simply asking how you
okay, well, I'm on the reality. This is the reality. The reality is this is a war. These people are waging war on us for time. This has gone on for 1400 years. This is nothing new. And the whole time while this goes on, police leaders or political leaders want to invite more. They want to invite more.
The blood is on the hands of people like you and the left who have allowed these people to come into our country and caused chaos. There are going to be knocks on the door of families tonight saying that their daughters, their mothers and their family have probably been maimed and killed in the streets of our own capital. And the left have allowed it to go unnoticed. And we have people like this laughing hysterically. Is this really a time to laugh? There is a fucking terrorist attack. There is a fucking... Because it's so shocking that you would laugh at something like this. This is a terrorist attack. This is... And this country is being fucked by people like this who think it's hilarious that anybody who criticizes Islam is some fucking scummy, lower class fucking racist.
Yes, the EDL, they're also racist as well as...
It's not the EDL, it's Unite Against Hate, it's a different organisation.
Was it?
Ah, that phrase again, was it?
EDL were there as well, at the start.
No, they weren't.
Were they not? Everyone on EDL.
she doesn't even know who was on the other side of this protest, who was speaking.
Yeah.
Tommy Robinson was there, but he quit the EDL years ago.
Pardon?
Tommy Robinson was there, but he quit the EDL years ago.
No.
You don't know who Tommy Robinson is? You're protesting against Tommy Robinson's past organisation, but you don't know who he is?
Now this has to be, you know, in the series of interviews we have done of left-wing students, one of the bizarrest things I have heard. She clearly has been given a line to repeat, perhaps by professors at the university, lecturers, and she's there saying that she hates the EDL, but she knows nothing about the EDL. She doesn't even know that Tommy Robinson founded them. She doesn't know who he even is.
Imagine a whole gang of thugs training with communist Islamicists at a mosque, learn from one of their operatives that Tommy Robinson is at a McDonald's with his camera lady, and then they come over and attack the woman to get the camera, viciously start beating her, she fights back, he fights back, and then they run as cowardly scum, and the police are all there and do nothing.
All the way through this, I knew at certain points, with Lucy and with George as well, who are the camera team with us, I knew we'd get attacked at certain times, but I never thought they'd go for Lucy. I guess I thought too highly of them. I thought they had morals. So I always said, and as soon as they turned up and I saw the mask, I basically getting out of the car, I looked across, I see 7 men coming towards me with masks, and then I stood and I tried to move away from Lucy. I thought they'd all go for me. So I thought, that's sound, I'll move away, they'll all come for me. They didn't. They sectioned off. One went to George and one went to Lucy. And then, as you can see, he starts attacking Lucy. He's resting on the floor there. But to be honest, Lucy gave as good as she got. Lucy gave as good as she got, and he ended up, she was kicking him and hitting him. And even at the end, I looked over and even see George, the other camera lad, as well, scuffling with them as well. But they were masked up. They were ready to attack us. And as you're right, straight after this, the police have turned up. They've done nothing. No one's even spoke about poor Lucy, really. No one spoke about her. I haven't seen one journalist, no one's contacted her, no media have contacted her. She's violently attacked for being a journalist. They're journalists. But yet every single report from the mainstream media, Tommy Robinson fighting with masked men. No, that's not how it was. Tommy Robinson was getting a burger from McDonald's, and he was, and his camera girl and his cameraman were violently attacked.
Well, we've known it's this bad for some time now, and me and my friends often say that the day that Richard Spencer got punched was the day when the bar was set very, very low, because we saw how many people celebrated it afterwards, how many people fetishised it. We saw the memes coming out saying, punch a Nazi, it's okay to punch a Nazi. And of course, you know, who's a Nazi? Well, we decide that. So we've realised that it's going to be violent for some time. The most shocking thing, actually, the most upsetting thing was how many people are saying it's fake or it's staged. People seem to think that Tommy has hired these people to come and attack us, which if he had, I think I might have to have a little word with him. But it's funny, quite a lot of people probably think, like to call themselves feminists and like to say that they stand up for women's rights, and yet here's a video of a woman on the floor and it's fake, it's staged, or even better, I've seen some people say that I deserved it, which is very nice. Some of my friends who are quite normal, who have normal parents, who think that everything's fine and the media don't lie, they saw that clip and it actually did make them realise how bad it is. So in a way, you have to be able to show the extremes for people to wake up and realise, actually, yes, this is what's happening on the streets, this is what's happening, it's not being reported, and it is being celebrated. Because I'm in this world, I know what to expect, we all do, we all know what happens. I've seen Tommy get in trouble before, it's just what happens. But I mean, there is a part of me that does feel sad when I realise that actually no single media outlet has got in touch with me. I've had maybe one friend get in touch with me. This is sort of something that's just going to get brushed under the rug.
Investigation into sexual exploitation in Newcastle. Andrew Norfolk is a Times journalist who uncovered the original scandal in Rotherham. He joins us now from Leeds. And I have to say, hundreds of victims involved in this. How was it that nobody within the community reported exactly what was going on to the police?
There's been a long-standing history of failure to acknowledge, failure to report, failure to tackle in towns and cities the length and breadth of England. Newcastle was no exception there. It's merely realised what was going on rather later than many other places.
And I spoke to a local councillor earlier who is a Muslim himself. He said, as a Muslim, he has received a lot of abuse for speaking out on this subject. Do you think certain groups are now being blamed for what's gone, even though, of course, it was a minority that's been convicted?
Well, we've gone from a position where in the first years we were reporting about this and suggesting there was a hidden crime pattern that needed to be acknowledged and then tackled. In those early days, every time we wrote about this, we were accused of racism.
So the reasons. There's two reasons. The first one is the one I just said, which is this: because of political correctness, everyone now in a position of authority has been indoctrinated and brainwashed into they mustn't be accused of rape. Racism is actually now the worst thing you can be accused of. It's worse than being a serial killer or a paedophile, because it's like the 21st century equivalent of witchcraft. If you're accused of it, you're guilty till you're presumed guilty, until you can prove your innocence, and your life can be ruined. It's much better to be a serial killer or a bank robber or something. The penalties are much less. But if you can have your life ruined just because of an accusation like this.
It's an accusation, not even being found.
Exactly. And the people who have had their lives ruined because of these accusations of this crime. And people they've been brainwashed. And I've been reading a book recently called Easy Meat by Patrick McLaughlin, which talks about the long history of this sex slavery, it's called grooming gangs, but it's really sex slavery. And he makes this point that the reason that the local authorities, that the child services and the local authorities, the police wouldn't do anything is because they were terrified of political correctness. And even Jack Straw said something more or less the same, didn't he? So you've got that reason. And I believe the second reason is especially amongst the authorities and the police, they are terrified of violence that might erupt if they actually try to enforce the law.
Eventually, we were ready to publish, and we published that first story in January 2011. The whole of the front page and 4 pages inside. Within a few days, the government had ordered a national inquiry. Within 2 days, Jack Straw, the former Home Secretary, went on Newsnight and said that some young Pakistani men in his Blackburn constituency viewed white girls as easy meat, which created further headlines.
The step forward in Newcastle seems to be that finally everybody who speaks on this subject seems to acknowledge that there is a particular issue with a small subsection of men within the South Asian community, predominantly Pakistani Muslim heritage, and it has to start. The hard questions about this have to start. Now, of course, it's hugely difficult for other members of that community for whom such crimes are abhorrent to feel that they are being somehow tarred with the same brush. It's a community that already feels under siege in many ways for issues such as terrorism, etc. And it's always going to be difficult when such questions are asked against a community that feels demonized. But unless we ask those questions, unless we really try to understand why this pattern has put down such deep and damaging roots across the country, then we will never actually understand why these men think they have a right to treat young girls like that in the way they do. All we will be doing is picking up the pieces when the next case comes along, wherever it's going to be in England, picking up the pieces of damaged lives instead of actually taking the action that will prevent these men doing it in the first place.
Well, staying with that theme then, it has been suggested in the past, hasn't it, that this sense of institutional political correctness has really hampered police investigations. Do you think that is the case with investigations like this?
Well, it is inescapable in a case like the Rotherham scandal. Frontline street workers who were working with girls who were suffering these crimes were reporting to their bosses. They were writing reports, and they were being told to remove the word Asian as a description of the perpetrators. There was a widespread terror among not just police forces but within local authority social services department of somehow treading into a cultural minefield. That for too long hampered these crimes being investigated properly. It is a step forward that nobody seems to be denying anymore that there is an issue here.
They're going to bomb Syria this week. We can't live real moral lives. We have a morality we create through our taste. We go, oh, I think that's too much. They should allowed this play to be shown, blah blah blah. And we create this kind of faux morality. So, you see people criticising people for stuff. Yeah, she did a video, sort of thing about Lily Allen, she was in this Grenfell Tower thing, and she did a video like 6 years ago that was demeaning to and you're like, okay man, but that's, you've got to understand where those ideas come from. That's a religious idea, the idea that she, isn't pure anymore because she's done something that you disagree with, and that your taste defines what her morality is, and all this different stuff. It's quite a complex psychological soup that's going on there in our society, where we think we have the right to say what's moral and what's immoral, often based on very little information. So in the old days there'd be an idea that maybe a religious figure, a priest or something, could tell if someone was good or bad, but they'd have to meet them. Like, to go to the stage of like, here's a few words said by someone, like, that's the authority of a kind of Mesopotamian god king. They are immoral, they will always be immoral. Lily Allen said something 6 years ago, she's immoral. It's like an incredible level of hubris.
What if you were a bit of a dick 10 years ago, like that?
Right.
On a medium that people were still finding their way on, and now you are genuinely, you moved on, your kids,
right?
And yet the breast tweet is always with you. I mean, it's a sort of dystopian nightmare that you'd always be stuck with your worst joke.
Right.
You'd be stuck with your lowest, sort of crassest moment.
Well, this came up recently with Bill Maher.
Right.
Bill Maher, there was something that he wrote, I think in 1989.
Right.
Which is insane. I mean, 29 years ago he wrote something, and people used it recently against him. And 29, I don't know how old Bill is. I don't think Bill is even 60. So we're talking about something that he wrote when he was in his 20s. Right. He was a struggling stand-up comedian.
The internet's very good for this, isn't it? Of course, because you can dig up everyone. Everyone's screwed up. Sure. Apart from you, apart from yourself.
Of course.
It's we had somebody recently in Britain who everyone wanted to go for suddenly, and they found an article he had written about saying he didn't agree with Holocaust denial laws. Okay, he said he just thought it was a bad idea for free speech. When the internet was for seconds trying to find out other stuff about him, they found an article which said, I'm a Holocaust denier, so prosecute me, sort of thing. Which he isn't a Holocaust denier. It's just nobody bothered to read beneath the headline. And so suddenly, in the middle of the thing where everyone was tearing apart his life, they also said, and he's a Holocaust denier. And that was there. And then like something he wrote 15 years ago, and it wasn't even something he wrote, it's a headline of something. And everyone, again, nobody cares, get on to the next victim, everyone's a Nazi.
Why does people show hatred in you? Because first I didn't know you, that's why I was doing it. But when I knew you, you're a good person, you're not a bad person.
No, it's alright, man. But you, as I said, just get the help you need, because you need help. You need medical help.
The question I always want to ask, among other things, is do you know where this is going to lead? Do you know what it's going to do if you keep breaking down definitions and terms and words? Do you know what happens, for instance, down the road if you keep on saying that Sam Harris and Douglas Murray having a conversation about something is hate speech? Do you know what relief that's going to give other people down the road about what they're going to be able to get away with? This is what's being created all the time at the moment, it seems to me. There's this idea that you police the discussion along incredibly narrow lines that happen to surround your own comfort zone, and call everything outside it, not just stuff I don't agree with or things that I would argue with or debate with, but hate speech. It's just, I think, very, very dangerous down the road. You can see exactly the trail that bit of gunpowder goes to.
I can. Where do you think it goes?
I think it goes to a point where people become cynical about any claims made about anyone. And the likelihood is that if 99 times you've seen Sam Harris, Douglas Murray, Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson, whoever, called hate speech, then the 100th time that somebody uses the term hate speech might be on somebody who is engaging in hate speech, and all your defenses are going to be down.
This is for you, Tommy. In the name of Allah, the death angel doesn't care if you're big. I will cut your mother. I'll rip, you will eat your mother. I'm telling you, I will kill you and take your merchandise. You better pray 2 rakats, you bloody kuffar. Pray to your Lord, because I will kill you and take your merchandise. If you was me, you'd kill people because you're big. I will stab his tooth and snatch his soul, chew it, and his death will come with my hands.
We're in London and I had to do the police's job, which is what we done yesterday for them. So yesterday morning I gave the police the man's name, his address, where he lives. That's where he lives over there. Ciao. Have you got mental health issues?
Yeah.
Right, so you're talking about killing my kids. How have I found you before the police have found you? How have I got you here before the police have found you? Where are you running to? I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to hurt you. You're threatening to murder my children, bruv. I'm not going to hurt you, okay? If I wanted to hurt you, I'd already hurt you.
Okay.
I'm not going to hurt you. You're threatening to murder my children.
How do you think, brother, if you've got mental health issues, you need help, bruv. If that's the case, if you're standing in front of me now, yeah? Are you going to come to my house and hurt my family?
No.
So why are you saying it, kid?
Someone keeps brainwashing.
Someone's brainwashing you, and I can tell someone's brainwashing. Who's brainwashed you?
Ali Dawah.
Ali Dawah's brainwashed you to kill my kids.
I got that from YouTube, actually. Someone said he killed someone and taken money.
Take merchandise, like some Islamic.
Have arm wrestle.
Can you have an arm wrestle? See, mate. Look, listen, bro.
Friendly one.
Friendly one. Look.
Oh my God.
Look. Son, I can see. I'm meeting you now, and I know there's no danger to my family. Yeah.
Okay, I'll protect you. I'll protect you.
You protect me. So Ali Dawah, talk to me. So Ali Dawah brainwashed you.
I watched his video.
You'll be okay, brother.
Video arm wrestling match, me and you.
Afterwards we will.
We'll have an arm wrestling match afterwards.
Yeah.
You want a little arm wrestle?
1, 2, 3, go. Oh, there you go. See how strong you are. He is strong. He is strong.
There you go.
In 2010, I set up a meeting with Theresa May. Obviously not to meet me. She didn't think she was meeting me. She thought she was meeting one of her constituents. I turned up instead. I turned up, I brought a laptop with me, and I spent 20 to 25 minutes grilling her. You can read the story because the Daily Mail straight away, she must have some link. It got leaked straight away that EDL leader ambushes Theresa May. Now, when I sat down with her, I explained to her my fears in Luton about Islamic extremism. Because that's what they are, they're fears. That scares me. This ideology scares me. I've got 3 young kids. There's different sorts of fears. I've been in some bad situations. I got put in Woodhill prison, Category A prison, where 4 Muslims were in there, who were in there for 30 years because they were planning to kill and blow us up. Yeah? I've had some very difficult situations, and that's a different sort of fear. Okay, I can deal with that. I can deal with a fear if I walk down the street and 10 Pakistani lads want to come over now. I can deal with that. There's a fear I can't deal with. It's a fear when I look around my town, I look around my country, and I look at my kids, and I get this gut-wrenching fear that will not go away. That's a lot of what drives me. It's a lot. A lot of people say there's a fear, there's a reason why people are doing these things. Now in 2010 I saw Theresa May. I explained to her about Luton Islamic Centre and the Imam called Kadir Bast. They're part of my local council, yeah? Luton in Harmony programme. In that documentary Proud and Prejudiced, that the Imam was portrayed as the moderate Imam from Luton. I've been on his website, okay? On his website, on the mosque website, it says we should execute homosexuals. A 12-page justification is why women should be lashed for adultery. I knew he was a school teacher. He was, so I warned Theresa May of all this in 2010. 2014, let me play a video of a conversation between me and Kadir. The problem I have is that, can you blame us when we're seeing this? Then when we see a moderate Imam put forward, Luton has 30 mosques, only one Salafi, one Wahhabi, yeah? Who's the face all the time? Who's the representative that the council go to, the newspapers go to, the TV go to get their view on everything? The Salafi mosque, the Salafi Imam. He has been empowered by my council to be the face, and he's not representative of the majority of Muslims in Luton, but that's what we see. Now, when I left the English Defence League, who did the radio station go straight to? Again, Kadir Bast, the moderate Imam.
As I was talking about Tommy Robinson, asking your questions about him, he came knocking on our door, and now he's sitting here in the studio with us. He's joined in the studio now by Kadir Bast from the Luton Islamic Centre, who we had as an arranged guest on this subject as well. So we've ended up having a bit of a Barney about all of this. And just before the news, Kadir, you said that in an ideal society there would be punishments for example, homosexuals. And Tommy Robinson had put the point to you that this is why he was concerned by your ideology, which is why he was anti-Islamic and anti-Islamization and put Luton Islamic Centre in that camp. Do you understand why Tommy Robinson might be concerned by Islamic ideology when, even though you say we don't want it in Britain, you do use phrases like in an ideal society and then come up with a statement like that?
Yeah, that's fair enough. He has every right to disagree and to criticise it. Because look, you know, you can look at how the Sharia is established in Saudi Arabia, for example. Do the people fear the Sharia? They don't fear. Actually, you haven't said that. You know, sometimes from the things that people fear is what keeps society in order. Like, you know, you fear going to prison, so you do not commit a crime. You know, it's similarly like that. It's a deterrent. The Sharia rules are deterrents. They're not implemented. How many hands get chopped off? How many women get lashed? And it just doesn't happen. Very, very, very few. So 40. I mean, okay. In an ideal Islamic society, these laws do not get implemented. They're just deterrents.
Okay. Final question for Mr. Robinson. Then we have some calls, and I want you to talk to our listeners.
What Kadir's saying is that gays should be too scared to be gay.
I have a problem when this man is a representative of the Muslim community in my town. I have a problem. I have a problem when I first met him. I called a meeting with him. I went to meet him. It's because all these tensions were in the town, and he's the main face. He's the main person I thought to see. When he walked in, he said, Tommy, Sharia law will not come to this country in your lifetime. Probably not your sons, but the generation after that. So thank you for concreting why I'm resisting this, Kadir. It's another quick video.
Non-Muslim youth, non-Muslim girls, raping, pimping, beating, abusing our whole system. Rather than deal with these gangs, they would rather persecute us, the people who are highlighting the issue. And the fact is, the police, the councils, the government, everyone needs to wake up.
Many of the issues when we formed the EDL that I wanted to raise and wanted to bring to the surface have been brought to the surface. Many of them. If you wish to, you can draw a graph on the arrests. Do it yourself. Look at the arrest rate for Muslim grooming gangs, which is a big problem in many of our communities. You'll see a line go straight across like this, English Defence League forms, the arrests go through the roof. Only when people took to the streets, only when they could not hide this fact any longer because they've hid it, only when the world's media were listening to us talk about what's happening to our family members and the police are facilitating it, did they do anything about it. I'll tell you one story. I stayed in Blackburn for the night before a demonstration. I spent the time with a family. I listened to horrific stories of what's happening to their 12-year-old daughter. She's going missing as well for days. She's got a 19-year-old brother in that room that's telling me the stories. I mean, horrific. And you hear these stories and you're having to listen to all these things that are going on. It's going on everywhere. The next day we're at the demonstration. It's all kicking off. I've gone down to the front where it's kicking off to try and calm people down. Who's at the front kicking off with the police? Her brother. There's usually a lot of reason for the anger that people are seeing, okay? To just label it and ignore it. The main reason I want to get across is why.
The BBC makes a documentary called Three Girls, about 3 of the girls who suffered from these rape gangs. And then a man in Wales sees it and gets so enraged, people say at the local pub he was railing against the bloody Muslims and all this sort of thing. And then he hires a van and drives into a crowd of people outside a mosque. And you have this awful feeling that the BBC didn't want to deal with the issue that the programme was about for years because it was so awful and ugly and sounded like something made up by some kind of nativist, racist, you know, so it said everything. And then they do. And then it turns out a member of the public sees it and drives a van into a crowd. I mean, you know, this sort of couldn't get more complex in a way. So, and I thought after that, okay, maybe the BBC were right. Maybe they should cover up the gang rape of 1,500 girls. Maybe the public can't cope with it. Maybe they will get into vans. Now, as it happens, I know the British public, I think, fairly well. And I think that guy in Wales is a very, very unusual figure. I don't think it's very common. I don't think everyone's going to do that. I don't think we're all like that, wicked, mad. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know for sure everywhere. I don't know what happened in this country or in various other countries if there were 3 attacks like that in quick succession. I don't know. But this is really, this is going to get complex. But it seems to be the only way around this is to not get into that and to try just to publish the facts when they happen. Because it's just obviously seems to be much worse. We always know in political scandal what's worse, the cover-up. It's always the cover-up.
Right.
And that may be the case with all this. Maybe the argument for just the papers explaining stuff that's happened is maybe that's all they can do, and that one could just say to them, it'd be a lot worse if you bottle this up, because otherwise people will get the idea that there is some conspiracy to cover over certain stories, and they'll be onto something.
And in fact, if you think about the millions of people that must have seen the story on the rape of 1,500, the fact that only one person responded that way is pretty extraordinary in and of itself.
Yes, I would have thought on some of this. I mean, you know, I don't know. Again, I mean, there are lots of examples one could use, but when something bad happens, like the Manchester Arena attack, I'm amazed in a way that people are so decent. I mean, I'm so pleased they are, but we don't go out looking for people to attack. You know, the public, certainly in Britain, I think, have seen, I think it's the same in America, the public, we're not really lynch mobs waiting to be got going again. But the expectation that we are is the only possibility of creating us in such a way. It's only by treating us as if we can't deal with ugly things that go on that you could see the situation. That's where we began, to see the situation in which that all goes wrong in that different way.
The whole culture of tech today is such a progressive thought bubble. It's an echo chamber, and it's very, very, like I said, it's better that they're really progressive and open-minded and left-wing than radical right-wing. I think it's better.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, if by radical right-wing you mean, you know, kind of
racist,
racist or something. Yeah, of course. Although these people have, as I say, all the ability to create those people. So, I had a friend who, a lot of friends involved in the Northern Ireland conflict many years ago in the UK, not that many years ago. One writer had a beautiful phrase about it, where you got to a stage where everyone was killing everyone. He said, you also got to the stage where truth was whatever you were having yourself. And we're not far away from that place where I say what you call is hate speech, you say what I say is hate speech, let's call the whole thing off. We're not very far away from there, actually.
For too long in this country, we, media, the establishment, society, the chattering classes, the liberal elite, whatever term you want to use, have ignored the issue of grooming gangs, of young, vulnerable teenage girls who have been victimized, drugged and raped and abused. whether it's the Rotherham case or all the other cases that were replicated across the country, it is both the conclusion of the prosecutor in the Rotherham case, British Pakistani Muslim Nazir Afzal, or indeed the official inquiry into why it took so long for these young, vulnerable, underage girls to get justice. Both of those concluded that fears of racism prevented us from coming to the defense of vulnerable underage girls. Fears of racism meaning that the state was scared that it would be accused of being racist if it rightly arrested and prosecuted British Pakistani, largely British Pakistani Muslim men in their abuse of underage white teenage girls. And so, from fear of appearing racist, there was a silence across the country as multiple cases of grooming gangs emerged up and down the country, as evidenced now due to multiple prosecutions, successful prosecutions, but sadly and unfortunately too late. If we hadn't all been silent, if we had all addressed this issue head on when it needed to be addressed, when it was time to address it, then the void would not have emerged for the populist agitators to fill that gap and become popular, actually, as a result of addressing what is a legitimate issue. They ended up hijacking what should have been the concern of every right-minded citizen in this country.
Empower them, which is something... You don't want actual racists and Nazis to have legitimate grievance claims, and you don't want them to be able to disguise themselves as something they're not.
And unfortunately, it takes a bit of courage to address something that people will hurl abuse at you for talking about. I know on this show, on my own show on the weekends, I've tried to book certain MPs to come on and address the issue of grooming gangs, and on multiple times they've had to back away from fear of the backlash. We recall Sarah Champion, who in the Labour Party attempted to address this and lost her position in the front bench as a result. There have been multiple cases now, and it's beyond any level of doubt that there's a disproportionate number of British Muslims involved in grooming gangs against underage white girls. And to say that is to report on the facts. It's not to be racist. And if we're backing away from this conversation, then all we're doing is leaving the ground far open in what is a legitimate issue that requires addressing. We're leaving the ground for the populists to hijack that legitimate issue and make it their own for their own nefarious purposes. And that's precisely what's been going on. And it's in that regard that what I'm saying here is I wish that those young girls had seen justice served for them as fast as the judge served Tommy Robinson justice in this case. Because in this case, it's very easy for us to pick on the bogeyman. But actually the truth is that our silence over decades in this country is the real bogeyman. And that's the real thing we should despise, our own cowardice in the face of grooming of young girls up and down this country and our conspiracy of silence.
Now you see, they were trying to project you as if you are anti-human, you are as if you are Islamophobic and all that. We have been following that, and when we listened to one of your speech at one of the universities you did about 3 or 4 years ago, that was very moving speech you delivered, and we saw it that the words that you were speaking was coming out from your heart. So when you face fascism, when you face Islamofascism, then there must not be a difference between the right and left. All people should unite when it comes to facing Islamofascism that we are
Another
seeing.
point I'll make to you about prison. I've been in prison. Wood Hill is an ISIS training camp. That's it. Our Category A jails now are radicalising and radicalising. We've got 800 coming out a year. When you go to jail, you're weak, you're vulnerable. You're now being turned to hate the system, hate the country, hate everything about us. And I'll make this claim now. At some time this speech will be looked back upon after a prison convert has come out, maimed, killed and murdered on our streets, because it's going to happen. There's nothing being done. They're not segregated, they're not isolated. In 2012 I spent 20 weeks on solitary confinement. These terrorists are not on solitary confinement. They're on the wings, converting, making people take the Shahada. Converting them. The imams, even in Wood Hill, are trying to do something. They're not trusted, they're not listened to. They're seen as stooges.
The non-Muslim community, when they look at me, they say, okay, he's a right wing. There's no such thing as right wing. We're dealing with terrorism.
I agree.
If you criticize ISIS, it doesn't mean you have a political stance. It means you have a humanitarian stance. You're a human being that is against butchering other human beings. So the left attacked me for a very long time, constantly, day after day after day, article after interview on radio. Every day I was being attacked in Australia, and then they came to
left
realize,
attack.
yes,
The left attack you. You're a Muslim imam coming out speaking against terrorism.
The left are the real bigots, not the right. The left are the real racist bigots. It is them. The left, whenever they see a moderate Muslim or a peaceful Muslim who criticizes the majority of texts, they come and they say, oh no, a Muslim can't be like that. A Muslim is like Anjem Chaudhry. A real Muslim is like these radicals. So this guy must be a fake. Bash him. And what do we do about the radicals? Understand and tolerate. They are the real bigots who in their minds believe that a real Muslim can't be a moderate. And this is what I've first-hand experienced.
You've experienced that from the left?
I call myself a peaceful man. Oh no, you're criticizing this book that calls for beheading people. So what do you want me to do? I want the Bukhari completely banned from universities. Why should it be used as a source for writing a thesis?
I ended up getting imprisoned and I spent 22 weeks in solitary confinement because my life had gone so chaotic. I was neglecting my family. I was English Defence League, English Defence League, English Defence League. That's it. Yeah? And then I had a chance and the time to think about the effect it was having, where we were going, what we were doing. The movement changed on the outside whilst I was in prison. I'd fought for years to keep far-right elements out. They were welcomed back in. I then had a time to evaluate. I'd made a decision during that prison sentence, and the reason why I talk about this prison sentence is because to get around their laws, because you're only allowed to spend 28 days in solitary confinement because of your mental health issues. Yeah? What they did is every 28 days they moved me from one solitary confinement prison to another. So I went from Wandsworth to Bedford, Bedford to Woodhill, Woodhill to Wandsworth, Wandsworth to Wayland, to get around the laws for what they were doing. My family contacted human rights lawyers. They explained, listen, our son has spent 12 weeks in solitary confinement, listed all the things. All the human rights lawyers like this, you've definitely got a case, this is out of order, we'll get a judicial review. Yeah, he's the leader of the English Defence League. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I mean, we can't represent him. That's how toxic it's become. That's how powerful political correctness is. My family then looked for who represented Jamie Bolger's killer. Child killer. Cut off the penis of a child and fed it to him. Disgusting, sick. They contacted him. Went through the same scenario, explained the situation, got to the fact that I was the leader of the English Defence League. Whoa, can't touch him. He represented a child killer. He would not represent me. That is how toxic it had become to speak out and be critical of what I've seen. Now, we tried to get ASBOs. We did contact the council before any street protests. I'm not going to stand here and pretend I'm an angel, because I'm far from it. I'm not going to stand here and defend the actions of every English Defence League demonstration either, because some of them are indefendable, and I wouldn't want to anyway. What I would also point out, ISIS. Many ISIS fighters for ISIS, there's a lad I know from Luton who's out there fighting for him. They're coming back. I draw the point. They are following from scripture from the Quran. They practice from the same Quran that the Kurds who are fighting for freedom also follow. So I'm not saying all Muslims are bad. I'm saying what I've tried to do today and what I'm trying to paint a picture of is why. I want you to understand why. Because they've got no evidence on me. I'm walking on this case, yeah? But they've got little stupid bits of evidence for tax and irregularities against 5 or 6 of my family. Yeah? So I know the whole time, which I kept saying to my family, when I get to court, this isn't about you, it's about me. Yeah? I'm getting offered a deal, I know I am. So, and again, my views are my views. They're not my wife's views. They're generally not my wife's views. She despises it. So, I get to court. I say to my wife, I walk into court, I'm offered a deal. Plead guilty to these charges, we drop the family. Yeah? The charges they wanted me to plead guilty to would have resulted in 5 years in prison. And again, all of this is documented through documentary makers, which will be coming out soon. Is I walk outside and I bring my wife. I say, look, I've been offered a deal, I'm getting 5 years, but don't worry, everything's dropped against you, blah, blah, blah. My wife's crying hysterically, saying, please don't, 5 years is too long. Bearing in mind, we know I haven't done it. We know what this is all just all fabricated in order to get in a position. So I go back in and refuse the deal. I say, I'm not taking the deal, because 5 years is a long time as well. It's a long effect on my kids, and at the time I'm weighing it all up. They then swear the jury in. They swear 3 Muslims in on my jury. 1 PCSO. So I'm sitting there thinking, how can you have a PCSO as my jury? 1 PCSO. I'm ready to go through the trial. Just before the trial stops, they stop it. Stop. They come out again. Because bearing in mind, they can't have me getting not guilty. If I get not guilty for everything they've just done, everything they've fabricated, I'd be able to destroy them, what they've done. Yeah? So they offer me a deal again. Now this deal, first thing I say to the solicitor, what's the maximum I can get? Maximum I can do. It's at 18 months. I wait up, 18 months means serving 6 months in prison. I'm taking that straight away, and they're leaving everyone else. So I said, give me an agreement. I want it in writing. When this goes online, you'll see all the written agreement. Yeah? The written agreement was, we will drop the case against your wife. we will drop the case against Neil, which was another relation. We will drop the case. We will not take proceeds of crime, which means all the assets I've had frozen, my properties, will be released back to me. Now, I took that deal, so I went to jail. I got 18 months. Bearing in mind, what the crime was that my brother-in-law filled a mortgage form out wrong. The mortgage company didn't lose no money, no one lost no money. I'm then taken to Wood Hill Maximum Security Prison. That's one of the worst prisons in the UK, where it houses some of the country's most prolific Muslim terrorist extremists. I'm took there for this, someone's filled their form out. As soon as I get there, the difference is that when I was in there in 2011, 2012, when I was in there on solitary confinement, as I've said, they locked the whole prison to get me from A to B. This time, I'm just put straight on the first night cell. So straight away I'm thinking, well, this ain't, I'm going to get killed here. The door opens, it's a Royal Marine, an ex-Royal Marine who's now a prison officer. And he said, when we come to get you, do not leave this cell, your life depends on it. I went, all right, shut the door, half hour later, my door opens, he's there with 2 other men. You're going B-Wing. So I'm not going anywhere. He stepped straight in, if you don't go, I'm going to arrest you. So he was giving me a way out. I said, arrest me. He arrested me, took me straight to the way you get arrested, you go to the block. Took me straight to the block. When he's talking to me, he said, you know where they were taking you? I said, where? He said, you know the 6 that are in for planning to kill you? They've got 30 years. I said, yeah. He goes, they're putting you with them. He goes, Rach, I got the name, I put the name in my book. The woman who, because I checked who made the decisions afterwards, the woman who made that security decision to put me there, like even that screw that told me, he said, she'd have been done for corporate manslaughter. Yeah, she would have got done, because you'd have got killed. But you're dead then. Yeah? So it's no help.
The thing that's happened with Grenfell Tower, I mean, you know, we got a corporate manslaughter law brought in 2007, right? But it's very difficult to convict an individual of corporate manslaughter. Almost every corporate manslaughter charge is just a fine that's made to a company. I mean, they've deliberately structured that law in a way that when things like this happen, they aren't accountable.
So the next day my solicitor's come to see me, this is in the prison, so I've gone to see the solicitor. I've sat down with my solicitor. Afterwards, there's a waiting room like this. The door's open on the waiting room, I've seen the beards straight away. I got locked in the room. I got locked in the room and violently beaten up and battered. The Sun newspaper ran a headline saying, like it was funny, Tommy gets done. Tommy gets done. And it was Muslim, so I lost my teeth, I was beaten up, and there's supposed to be, that cannot happen. There has to be a duty of care in prisons for prisoners. You're not allowed to put, if someone's from one gang and someone's from another gang, they're not allowed to be near each other. Yeah, that's what they do. You're putting me, the most prolific and hated man from Muslim terrorists, because I've committed blasphemy and criticised their prophet, and you're giving me on a plate to them. The only thing that I was lucky was that I could tell by the Muslims, when they locked me in the room with them, they didn't know I was coming in. Because their faces looked like, oh my God, he's in the room with us. Yeah? And then it just went off. But if they'd have known I was going to be in that room, they'd have had chivs, they'd have had bays, they'd have been waiting, and I wouldn't be here. Yeah? But someone pulled strings to do that. Someone pulled strings to put me on B-Wing. Someone pulled strings the next day to put me in there. Someone had, it can't be explained, and I'll get onto other prison sentences where exactly the same happened.
I was highlighting the grooming, which many police have dirty hands over, because they facilitated it and allowed it. So there's many different reasons why I think that is, but I think that the main reason why they're trying to put me back in a prison cell now, because they know I'll get attacked. They know. I think many of them will be scratching their heads as to how I'm here still now, with what they've done. They've set it up so many times for me to be openly attacked, but I've managed to survive it. And unfortunately, I'll have another rerun in a little while. But I'm under no illusions that it's been done on purpose. It has to have been. For all the things that have happened, for them to go out their way to house me with Muslim murderers or terrorists, it has to have been. Of all the places in the UK they could have put me in prison, they put me there. If they murdered me, and there was a couple of years there, I was convinced if they murdered me, it'd be the final mistake in the UK. I thought it would cause such an uprising, such a street uprising, that it would be the end for Islam, the dominance it has in the UK. And I'd give anything for that. For my kids to grow up in a free society, I'd give anything, but I convinced myself that. And then when Lee Rigby was brutally beheaded, and there was no uprising, and there wasn't really anything, people just moaned about it for a couple of days and then went back to work, I then saw reality that actually I don't think it would. But there will come, I kept asking myself, there will define a moment in history where things will change. Something will happen where things will change. Europe will rise up. It's just knowing what it is and when it is, because we've seen soldiers beheaded, we see terrorist atrocities, and straight after Lee Rigby was beheaded, our deputy prime minister comes straight on the news and said, in the Quran, it says, if you kill one man, you kill all of humanity. This has no link to Islam. What he didn't say was that the following verse from that actually says, unless you cause mischief, and then you can be executed. And the exact phrase that Lee Rigby's killer quoted whilst killing him.
I don't doubt one day they will wipe me off social media completely, forever. They will take away my right to defend myself when I'm slandered in the press. The media will be able to tell you whatever they want about me, and I'll have no way of responding. If they can do it to me, they can do it to you. When I decided to sue the police because of the harassment of my children and many other things, my lawyer warned me things were going to get very dirty. Now that I'm suing them on multiple fronts, it's getting dirtier and dirtier. One day you won't be able to reach me on social media at all, or watch my videos on YouTube.
Behind me is the British Embassy in The Hague, and I'm here because I'm shocked and outraged. What happened in the United Kingdom last week is an absolute disgrace. Tommy Robinson, a freedom fighter and Islam critic, was jailed, while the judge issued a gag order to silence the media. Freedom of speech is being violated all over Europe and also in Britain. The lights of freedom are going out. Islam critics are taken to court, jailed or targeted with fatwas, and the authorities try to silence us. However, Islamists are pampered, protected, defended, and that is totally unacceptable. We will not accept this, never. We will continue speaking the truth about Islam and horrendous crimes like rape, genital mutilation, honor killings and terrorism. For we protect our own people, whatever the price may be. And that is why I stand here in solidarity with Tommy Robinson. Britain used to be a bastion of freedom of speech. Today, its authorities are behaving like North Korea and Saudi Arabia. I'm here on behalf of millions in the Netherlands, in Europe, and also in Britain. And in their name, I say we will no longer be silent. Our future is at stake, and we will protect it. Free Tommy Robinson. Release him from jail today. Restore freedom of speech and stop gagging the people.
Stan, I'm afraid us adults just let you children down. We didn't take care of our Earth, and now you've inherited our problems.
We didn't listen!
We didn't listen!